Howdy, folks, and welcome to episode 460 of the Dead Robot Society. Paul Cooley here, joining me today. Who's surprised? It's Terry Mixon.
Howdy ho, neighbors.
Do not do that. Do not try and channel Ned Flanders. Just don't. The beard ruins it. No response?
Nope, I don't need to say anything.
Oh,
my smile is the only response you need.
Yeah, but for those listening to the podcast, they can't see the grin. And also, the screen doesn't switch when you don't say anything, so they can't see your grin anyway.
Well, damn it.
You have to be aware of these things. You can't just sit there
I can't hum and still keep the same face. So I don't know how to exactly to make noise while I'm doing that. Maybe.
Well, just lift that right leg and let one out. All right, so I don't know why I said right leg. Could be your left. Whatever. Just the one cheek sneak.
Don't try to bias me with your own prejudices.
Nice. That was very, very nice. So how the hell are you, man?
Doing good. Had a new book come out this morning. Whoop. Heart of Vengeance, co-authored with Glenn Stewart, is out and in the wild. I can't wait to see how that stacks up against what my normal releases are. I'm hoping that it goes much bigger than my normal releases because that would be made of awesome. So, yeah, I got some audio to listen to from Veronica, the short story Fist of God that's in the omnibus. She's given me the audio for that so that we can make an omnibus audio edition of books 1 through 3 in the short story. What else am I going on? The writing continues. Doing well with that. Wrap up the first half of next month. I'll wrap up the next Empire book. It's definitely taken a turn that I didn't particularly foresee when this started. Might have to change the title from Battle for Terra because it's a third of the way into the book and they have not yet left. So it's not a certainty that they're going to arrive at Terra in this particular book.
Well, glad to hear I'm not the only one that has that problem. Can you say derelict? 3/4 of the book, they're nowhere near the ship. Yeah, that's usually a sign there's a little bit going on there.
And I can definitely tell you that I've introduced a character that no one is going to see coming, even though there have been breadcrumbs dropped that the possibility of something like this could occur. Yeah, no one's going to see this one coming. This one may be somebody that they look at me and they start going, did he just jump the shark?
Well, did you?
I don't think so.
You don't think so? Okay, well,
I don't think so. It's entertaining the hell out of me. I'm having a great time writing this particular story, so that's where I am. I'm in a good space, writing away like a wild thing, happy. So go ahead and bring me down, man. Just bring me down.
Why would I bring you down?
Because you're Paul Cooley. This is the spot where you go, bah, humbug. Because you're never happy at the same time I'm happy. This is how this works.
I'm not going to go bah, humbug. Not about your stuff. You're going to bah, humbug me. That's a completely different animal. Why? We'll ask one question. What do you mean by this release going bigger than your normal release cycles? You've had really good releases.
I have had really good release cycles. But Glenn Stewart's audience is significantly larger than mine.
Okay.
And so I look forward to seeing how much of a difference that actually makes.
The statistics I think are going to be the most important or the most enlightening are not going to be how well that book does, but how well your other books do after the release.
Yeah,
that's what I would be looking at more than anything else. Although obviously it's going to be awesome if the collab book does well, but I'd be very interested to know what happens to your back catalog afterwards.
Me too. That's one of the reasons I got the omnibus edition out last week, was so that it would be linked to in the back of this book, so
Gotcha.
I can hopefully lure some of his audience over. I'll be watching that closely.
Planning, what a concept. Who knew?
I know, it's a scary dang thing. Business. Who talks business as a writer? Shouldn't the left side of my brain be hurting right about now?
No, it'd be the right side of your brain hurting.
Oh, sorry, my bad. Oh.
Terry hasn't realized that he's reversed on the camera angle anyway. Oh shit. Okay. Anyway, let's see. As for me, had some bad news last Tuesday, and I really haven't been able to. It really fucked up the last 6 days. I haven't really gotten much done. I'm working on editing Flames, getting some things done there, and fixing the continuity errors I added at the end of the book. But today got up and edited for about an hour and a half, and got some stuff done, and still liking the book, which is kind of scary. I think what I'm going to go for is I think we're going to try and schedule Flames for a Friday the 13th release in October. I think that's
awesome.
I think that's what we're going to try and do. That means I've got to get off my ass and get all this fixed, and so we have the entire month of September to play with it. But that said, if that puts undue pressure on anything, I will push it. I will immediately push it to Halloween and just say screw it and not even worry about it, because I want everything to be right. I want the beta readers to have time to look at it. I want everybody to have time to do it, and I want to have time to record it.
Whoa, wait a minute. That sounds like planning ahead.
Yeah, I know.
Let's take a step back.
It all sounds like planning ahead. So, and I mentioned to B-Man, who doesn't watch this show or listen to it, but I mentioned to B-Man what you said about Flames. He has a better about you saying Flames was too generic of a title. So he had his answer to that. You ready?
I'm ready.
Flambés. Multiple
Stick with Flames.
Flambe. He said it just needed some class. If it just needs some French word to class it up.
I am not surprised that he suggested this. What I want you to tell him is that I am embracing that idea wholly and encouraging you to do so, while at the same time I'm actually not. So go ahead and really push it that I've said that that's a great idea and you should do it, and that you're actually considering it. And let's see if we can get him to start trying to talk you out of it.
Obviously, you don't understand how this friendship works. He's one of those people who walk ahead of me, open the trap door, and say, "Hey, it's clear. Come on in."
I've never understood friendships like that.
It's mutually destructive. The best kind of relationship.
Guys.
Yeah, it's guy logic. I can't tell you much more than that. Anyway, so I need to get back on Destruction as well, so we can try and meet the fall schedule for that. So I think at this point it's probably safe to say it's going to be November, but that's only if things don't get crazy. I mean, if I get really bad news from the MRI on Thursday, then all bets are off on what's going to happen. So we'll see.
Well, I am hoping that things come back good. Okay.
Well, so am I. Thank you. If not, I'll have a really scary book to write about brain tumors. It'll be fun. It'll be a lot of fun. See, more money I can make out of my personal tragedies and medical problems. Anyway, that notwithstanding. So basically what it comes down to is the normal bullshit, editing the book, get the stuff to the beta readers, follow the entire process again. One of these days, I think we probably need, we each need to do this on the site. We need to write a blog post, especially since our release cycles are starting to kind of collide together, about, okay, the writing's done. Here's what we're doing today, or here's what we're doing this week. I know we talk about in the show, but it'd be nice to maybe put up an episode or blog post or whatever about, okay, here's what I found today in the manuscript I didn't like. Here's what I found today in the manuscript I liked. Stuff like that. It might be kind of interesting to do something like that.
It's just, I've discovered that the faster that I write, the more balls that I have up in the air, the more difficult it is to keep things juggled around so that I'm doing things the way that I need to. I've actually got, if I looked at my schedule, I've got the novel that I'm writing. I've got a short story that's due for an anthology at the end of next month.
Right.
That if I don't wrap up this novel at about the time I think I'm going to have to actually set the novel aside for a couple of days and turn and focus on the short story so that there's time for it to be copy edited. Scheduling issues.
Yeah.
Got to make sure that I get that stuff done.
That's the one thing that I've put pressure on myself in the past, and I think it's actually hurt the books, and I really don't want to go through that again. And so I'm really trying to pull the reins back. And if I need to, work 16-hour days to get things where they need to go, so I can get it in the hands of the people that I need to get into the hands of before it goes to press, then that's what I'm going to have to do. But I can't keep putting pressure on beta readers. I can't keep putting pressure on my, cover design folks and editors. I can't keep doing that. I need to stop it. So it just seems like there's never enough time, and life just keeps getting in the way of things. And for some reason, it's just, when it gets in the way, it's a freaking steamroller. It doesn't just it's not speed bumps. It's usually like, oh, there's a whole section of the road missing. I'm going to have to build that in order to get over it, or find another road. So it's one of those things I keep thinking that one of these times I'm going to get right. And then I've just come to realize that it's never going to go the way I think it is. It's just, I'm going to just have to get a little more fluid and flexible and get better at, rolling with it.
Did you get a sound of a guy going, well, there's your problem?
Yeah. I need to start putting sound effects in the podcast. Well, there's your problem.
I expect to hear that if I actually go watch Logan Lucky.
You know what? You probably would. You probably would. I would be very, very surprised if it didn't make a shout out to Fletch going, it's all ball bearings now. Just need some 3-in-1 oil.
Speaking of marketing, I heard somebody describe it as Ocean's 11 for NASCAR fans.
That's what I described it as. Just
was it you that described it? That's awesome, because that's totally marketing right there.
And somebody reminded me that Soderbergh's the one who did it, and he did an Ocean's 11. So yeah, but I looked at it, I was like, is this Ocean's 11 for rednecks? What's going on here?
I remember you saying that you said for rednecks. I'm going for NASCAR fans instead.
I said NASCAR. I did say NASCAR.
Okay.
I didn't want to get people completely bent out of shape, but I'm sorry. Those folks, those are rednecks. Those are not NASCAR fans. Those are rednecks. Did you listen to that? They are stereotypes. I mean, I would hope, and I have to, full disclosure, I will not be seeing this flick. But,
I think we need to assign this sucker now.
I will have to be dead drunk off my ass to watch this. It's like I've never seen those Will Ferrell movies either. So, but it just from the commercials, these folks look like walking stereotypes, all of them.
I can't wait to see Daniel Craig play that role.
Oh my God. It's terrifying.
Straight from Bond to that.
Well, Brosnan
Redneck James Bond. Whoa!
That is too scary for words, actually. We need to write that book. We need to write that book.
Okay, we need to get these horses on the road, man.
All right. I guess we should get into today's meandering episode where we talk about all sorts of things, including how to go back to an old work. Terry, have you ever heard the term synchronicity?
Yes. I believe it was an album.
Beyond the Album.
It's an excellent album, by the way.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. No, the synchronicity I'm talking about is when one thing happens, completely dovetails with another thing, and you find out the two are intermeshed and one couldn't happen without the other anyway. At least that's the way I think of synchronicity.
I think that's more of serendipity.
No, serendipity is when something unexpected happens that's awesome.
Sounds like what you just said.
Anyway, I found a certain interesting post on the Facebook group, which was about how to rekindle an old work. In other words, a novel or a short story, novella, play, whatever, that you were working on, and for whatever reason you got pulled away from it, it died on you, or something happened, life happened, and suddenly it got pushed to the side. And it's been languishing in the trunk, the closet, the shelf, the drawer, whatever, for, years, months, years, whatever, decades. How do you get back to that work? How do you put yourself back into the mindset to finish it? How do you find your way back to love working on it? How do you bring it back to life?
It really depends on the reason that it was set aside. If you set aside a work simply because something else is pressing you, you've got to get something else done, and then you come back to it, that's a totally different beast than if you set something aside because you've written yourself into a corner and you have absolutely no idea what to do, or you've grown to hate something about the work. All of those are different sorts of things, and they have different answers.
They have different answers?
They do have different answers.
Okay, this is going to be interesting. Well, I budgeted an hour for this conversation. We're already screwed.
Oh, it's not going to be nearly that bad. It's going to be worse.
Prepare yourselves for a 3-part episode, folks. Terry, take it away.
I think, and this is all my personal opinion, but I think that if you set aside work because you've got to do something else, and it's not something that has any kind of flaw or problem that you've had that caused you to set it aside, getting back into it's easy. You just basically start at the beginning again, read your way through it, hit the end, and start writing. It's as simple as that. You just get yourself back into the story, bring it back into your mind, and continue to march on. If you've set it aside for a reason, like you've written yourself into a corner and you have absolutely no idea how to save those poor Marines, then you've got to figure out the answer.
The answer is don't.
In fact, that may actually be an answer that's workable, but you've got to figure out the right answer for you and for that story, whatever that answer may be. And depending on how much of a quandary you've gotten yourself in, you can get yourself in a real box trying to figure out, okay, what did I do and how do I get out of it? Sometimes you can write through it. Sometimes you've got to go back a little ways and say, I think I took a wrong path here somewhere, and you've got to figure out where you took the wrong turn or when you should have taken that left turn to Albuquerque. You got to figure out where you've got to make the change in the story, and then you can start from that point and go forward. If you've stopped a book because you loathe something about it, the characters, the plot, the guy's hair that's your hero, you're going to have to figure a way to find whatever the flaw was that just makes you insane and fix it so that you can continue on. Because if you've grown to hate a story, there's a problem there. You've got to love the writing you do. You've got to love the work that you're creating. You can't hate it, or it's going to come out like I hate it. And there's probably other reasons why people set aside books, but those are the big ones that jump to mind.
So now I'm here to blow your mind.
Oh, no.
I had all 3 problems with Flames.
God damn it.
Which I just finished.
Yay.
So obviously I found the way to break through it.
Tell us your secret.
There is no secret. It was a total disaster area. So real quick, a little history, try not to make it very long. I witnessed a house fire, saved a dog from it, and I got this idea about what would make somebody commit arson. And so I started doing a little research. It kind of dovetailed with a few other things I was doing at the time, looking at Sumerian gods for Garaga stuff. And suddenly I had an idea for a story. So I started writing it. And I got about 20,000 words somewhere in there into it and went, this is shit. It is not working. And I threw it away. And then I started from scratch. And it was a much better story for having done that. But that took about 6 months to a year between those 2 pieces happening.
Sometimes stories have to ferment in your head.
Sometimes they do. So then I was cranking along on it. I got the story to about 80,000 words, dragged in some of the stuff from the first attempt and reformed it, reshaped it because some of it was good. And then the writer happened. So I was
This
banging
is all
along.
Scott Sigler's fault then.
So I was banging along, getting all this stuff done, and then suddenly the writer jumped up and bit me in the ass. So that was another 6 months to a year of craziness. Then the street happened because everybody wanted the street, and then I had to write Alma for Daemons of Garaga, and then I had to do this, then I had to do that, and then right when I was going to do what?
Life happened.
Life happened, and then right when I was going to come back to it, the black happened. So we have the interrupt because the story sucked, the interrupt because, well, I got to do something else. And then there was also an interrupt of, hey, I went down the wrong path. I guess because I went down the wrong path to begin with. And so I backtracked completely, started fresh, and the story started to flow. But I've had to put it off because of getting blocked where to put it, on how to continue it. I was just not in the right headspace for it. And I think part of it was I didn't have enough confidence to really go through and storm this book because I just wasn't really sure it was any good. I had problems with that. So what finally made this happen is someone demanded to read it. I gave it to them. They came back and they went, "You have to finish this." I went, "Okay, fine," jokingly. And that was 6 or 7 months ago. So when I was working on Destruction, I went back and I was like, you know what? Okay, fine. Let's go see how big of a piece of shit this is. So I exported the entire book, all 82,000 words on it, on my iPhone, and I read it. And I wanted to know how the story ended.
That's a good sign.
I wanted to know how this was all going to happen. I wanted to know all the details. I wanted to know why some of this happened. And I wanted to know what it was going to look like by the end. What kind of freaking train wreck could I create by the end of this book that would just be epic? And so I started writing, and then that was a couple weeks ago, and now the book is done. So the big breakthrough for me was, there were two big breakthroughs. Number one was having somebody else tell me that this is worth finishing, because I just needed to hear it. I don't know how else to put it. It was just, I was so disenchanted with my other books because they haven't sold. They just haven't. None of them. You know, Closet Treats, the Garaga stuff, whatever. And we can blame it on marketing, covers. We can blame it on anything else. Doesn't matter. The bottom line is they haven't sold. So the idea of taking a chance and spending time on yet another work that is not going to sell when I'm trying to be a full-time professional writer is just kind of, it's almost professional suicide in a way. At least that's the way I was thinking about it. So once I got the idea from somebody else that, hey, this is actually good, it allowed me to go back and look at the book with fresh eyes and really pay attention to it and really see what I did. And I actually liked what I did. I liked the characters. I liked the characterizations. I love the things I could do with it. The suspense aspects, including a bit of horror in there, a little gore for the gore fans, not too much, but enough. And weird, freaky shit, and try to drag in all these different things. I got excited about the book again.
Always important.
And that was a big, big deal, getting excited about the book. I think there's this point where you can get fatigue in a story, and sometimes you have to go work on something else for a while in order to come back and see, hey, you know, this really isn't bad. Why don't you keep going on it? Because I think they're for some folks, and I'm one of them, you have this critical editor in your head that's always screaming, nope, this is gonna be a piece of shit. I don't know why you're even trying this. In fact, why don't you go dig ditches? That's all you're good at. You know, kind of thing. And why is there always an old crotchety voice when I talk about my internal editor?
Because it's inside your head.
Yeah, maybe I really am a crotchety old man at heart. Anyway, that's more or less how I broke through it. Now, that said, this is an interesting issue that I think you'll have if you do this. Once you break through, you may find out that the whatever you have to do to finish the book is going to require you to go change the beginning of the book or other chapters in the middle of the book. But you know what's funny is we do that anyway all the freaking time, because you find some cool thing you want to do later in the book. You have to set up the foreshadowing. You have to set up the little literary devices so it doesn't come as a complete and total shock to the reader, because you don't want them to get pissed off and think basically God's hand came down and fixed everything. There's has to be some kind of logic or rationale, or for you to just, I like to put the pieces there so that when you see the full puzzle, you go, I get it. All right. That's why he was doing these other things. And because it's fun, it's a lot of fun to do that as a writer. And as a reader, I love doing that too, because you sit there and you think, well, that's out of left field. And then you kind of keep that in mind and you find something else out of left field and you're like, wait a minute, these things are related. I don't know how yet, but they're related. And so you're sleuthing along with the author, with the characters, with the story. And I don't care what genre it is. The genre doesn't matter. The bottom line is that you can put that stuff in there and it's exciting. It's fun. It makes the writing fun. And that's the part that I was missing with this book, I think. And I think when you step away from something and you come back to it, it really can breathe completely new life into it. And the reason why I was talking about synchronicity is since somebody asked this on the Facebook page at the same time that I was actually doing it with Flames. So, which is why we're on this show. So
we are slaves to the listeners.
Yeah, what is your experience with rekindling the work?
Usually my rekindling of the work is a matter of I've had to set it a lot aside because I needed to get other projects done. The only one that I have just intentionally not finished, I've got a romance mystery that I wrote about 20,000 words into and then set it aside to write other things, and I haven't gone back to it yet. Not necessarily because I dislike the story, but because it doesn't fit within the scope of the books that I'm publishing.
Right.
My focus on writing has changed. I'd still like to see where that story goes, but I have to pay attention to what's selling. The commercial writer in me is speaking, and I have to listen.
Yeah, goddamn commercial writer. It's a big problem. It really fucks with our art.
Hey, but I did go ahead and write a post-apocalyptic story.
Yes, you did. Which you'd always wanted to do.
Yep, and I'll do another one. I have to, put some money back into the bank first.
I gotta go back to the stripper pole for a little while.
I believe you have correctly summarized the commercial fiction writer's life right there. It is indeed basically going back to the stripper pole. Thank you for clarifying that completely. Shake that moneymaker.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it's like I don't want to be known as the guy who just writes monster books, but I write monster books. That's what I write. It's not everything, but those are the ones that sell. So go figure. Have you ever had a story die on you?
Yes, but not permanently. I was able to resuscitate them.
Can you think of anyone in particular that there was something there that a way that allowed you to bring it back? Was there some specific circumstance? Was there just off chance you were checking the dead letter file and saw it? Was there what
Nothing has gone on that long. It's always been something where if something just died on me, I backtracked and found where I lost interest and started from there. I've only really set aside an unfinished work just a couple of times. Usually I finish them. So I'm an aberration, basically.
No, I don't think you're an aberration. I don't think you're an aberration.
As a writer, I think I may be. I usually finish what I start, which seems to be kind of like the opposite of many writers, where they'll start something, they'll get into the middle of it, and then for whatever reason, decide that it's not working and set it aside and move on to the next thing. I've intentionally said I need to finish what I start. And mostly I'm successful at doing so.
There are times when there are things I just want to write for me, and I may not finish them. It may just be I wanted to go play in this character's head for a while with some things, and then maybe I'll use that character and those things in another story. That was because the story I was writing was not the story that I wanted to write, because I hadn't figured out what it was I wanted to write yet.
There is one particular project that I set aside that I may have set it aside at perhaps the latest point in any process a writer may have gone through. I have a mystery that I originally wrote as a murder mystery and erotic romance that is complete. I paid for professional editing. There were a couple of changes that I was going to make to it, and it's sitting there completely done, except that I'm never going to publish it. I changed what I was writing and set it aside.
So now it's gathering digital dust?
It is. It's gathering digital dust.
So you're never going to release this?
Probably not, because to release it, since I'm not writing erotica anymore, I'd have to go back and pull out the sex scenes because they are quite explicit. And I'd have to go ahead and beef up the mystery a little bit to be satisfied with it.
I'll try not to make the joke about erotic.
Yeah, pretty much.
Goes in there. I thought you talked about this, I guess, like a year or two ago, about the fact that you actually were going to go through that process of tearing all that stuff out and writing what needs.
And I decided not to do it because my time is better spent writing something new.
Okay. Okay.
It's all a matter of would I be better off writing, and in this case, I'd be better off writing.
It's kind of a hard pill to swallow because if you spend all that time on a story that you actually like, that you think other people would like too, but you have to make some changes to it, and it may take some time to go back and fix it. It seems like a really difficult decision to make, to just basically say, well, this is a drawer novel and that's all it's ever going to be, and kind of toss it away.
Maybe I'll make it a Patreon reward at some point. Read Terry's naughty story.
Ooh. Or one you just sell from your website.
I just don't think I don't have the drive to do it.
Fair enough.
I don't think it would ever be successful enough to warrant doing so. And it goes against the brand that I've established.
Oh boy. Oh man. How much time do we have?
45 minutes? Just a tad optimistic.
I'm about ready to rip off the Band-Aid on scars here. Okay, so you just said something that has been brought up in the Facebook group again and a freaking again, and it just came up, I guess, about 2 or 3 days ago. This
Branding?
goes back, huh?
Branding?
Branding and pseudonyms. Now, I think you and I are both on the same page that pseudonyms in general are a bad idea.
With the exception of erotica.
Maybe with the exception of erotica, but bottom line is, as a rule of thumb, they are a bad idea because if you're indie, now if you're with a big 5 publisher, they're probably going to demand it in certain instances anyway. But as an indie, I think it's a really big mistake because you are trying like hell to get into as many people's hands as possible. You want every single word that you put down available to them and for them to be able to find it. So sci-fi horror or sci-fi techno thriller Paul Cooley now suddenly puts out a freaking romance or puts out a book like Flames, which has no science in it at all. Well, that's not entirely true, but it's very, very light on the science side of science fiction. Is that going to hurt my brand?
No.
Is that something I should put out under a pseudonym?
No.
Why?
Because it's not going to hurt your brand, and it would make it harder for people that might be interested in crossing over and trying something else that you've done to find it. Even if you make it an open secret that this is my pseudonym, it still makes it hard.
I agree.
Don't add walls between your readers and your work. That's bad.
I agree. Here are the reasons why Flames won't hurt my brand. Number one,
because 3 people will read it.
Shut up. Oh. Number one, the folks that grew up with me on the podcast grew up with me. The folks who found me on the podcast way back when and fell in love with Tattoo, Closet Treats, and The Fiend's Tales are going to love this shit. They will go absolutely crazy for it. And it has the same kind of thriller suspense feel that I put into The Black and that I put into Derelict. And I don't write happy, shiny people everywhere science fiction, regardless of whether it's set a few years from now in the near future or far future. So people are going to expect something pretty hard edged and foreboding from me, because that is my brand. Shadowpublications.com. We don't believe in happy endings.
Some mysteries. Getting rid of that tagline.
I did. Some mysteries shouldn't be solved. It's the same kind of ominous ring to it. So anything that I write in that vein, regardless of what its setting is, doesn't ruin the brand. Even the Graga stuff doesn't ruin the brand.
I think your new tagline should be, if you're invited to dinner, you're the main course.
Well, that's when I write my culinary serial killer. It's my version of Hannibal. I haven't gotten there yet.
To serve man.
To serve man. Greatest Simpsons episode ever.
I was thinking the Twilight Zone episode, but sure.
Well, they find this cookbook, and it's how to serve humans or something like that. It's how to cook humans. And so they freak out and they confront the aliens. The aliens blow off the space dust, and it says how to cook for humans.
Yes, that's because that's actually from a Twilight Zone episode, if I'm not mistaken, where exactly that trope and that book is used.
Right. But that's why I said greatest Simpsons episode ever. Douche. So pseudonym in most of these cases, I think is deleterious, very deleterious. I think it does actually cause more problems. Because think about this. Now you have to have a website for that pseudonym. Now you have to have all this other bullshit marketing material for that pseudonym. You have to have, back in the day, in the 70s, 60s, hell, even the 80s and early 90s, you could get away with it. And because people are going to find you through the publishing houses anyway. Today, they are searching the internet. They are searching the Amazon author pages. They are looking for the books that are on those places. If they hit your link to your author page and you actually have 25 books out there, but you have a few under different pseudonyms, I just don't see they're going to look at that and think you're a first-time author.
That's a risk.
And that's a risk. It's a big risk. I think it's actually a really, really bad idea to do it that way. I think as crazy as it is, when I write my science fiction romance novel, don't laugh. I know. Shut up, Terry. It will go out under my name. It will go out on the podcast or on shadowpublications.com. It may have a different tagline to it, but the bottom line is it will go out under my name, because I will not put something like that out there unless I'm happy with it, unless I think it's a good piece of work. So in that case, I don't think the pseudonym would do anyone any good. Like I said, now the big five, and maybe even some small presses, although I can't imagine there are many, might want you to come up with a pseudonym if you're writing in a completely different genre. But I think they're fools for doing that.
I think so too. Let me put Minnie the Office Cat out.
Put Minnie the Office Cat out. Doobie-doobie-doo. Doobie-doobie.
She wanted love and attention right now.
She wanted love and attention right now?
She's been asleep the entire time, but then she's like, oh, wait, you're here. You're talking. You must be talking to me.
So I think we're both in agreement, violent agreement, as you once said. I think we're in violent agreement. I still have not exactly parsed what that means yet.
What that actually means is slightly different than what we're having here. It's where we're both boisterously saying something that we think is at odds, but we're really saying the same thing. But where we think we're disagreeing with one another.
Oh, God.
That is violent agreement.
Okay, we need a Terry Wictionary. A Mixonary. Get on that, David Wood. I want a fake book cover for the Terry Mixonary.
He's too busy putting the three of our faces onto burlesque dancers.
What in the hell? Shouldn't he be writing books or something?
Man's got to have a hobby.
Uh-huh. So the pseudonym thing, we've beaten it to death on other episodes, but this is just kind of a refresher since people keep asking about it. I think this is our definitive answer. Don't do it.
Yeah.
Unless the erotica thing, that I can see. Anything else, I don't think
there
I'll
are
bother.
certain brands that it doesn't really matter if you're writing horror and just about anything else, unless perhaps you're writing children's books and horror. That might have an issue. So
that might have an issue.
There are places where a pen name is appropriate, where one of your audiences would become vastly offended by something else you wrote. And in this case, horror is just inappropriate for kids. Not the kind of graphic horror that I'm thinking of out of my head, Chainsaw Massacre stuff there. You probably don't want to have how Dr. Seuss found, this pretty flower right next to how I cut her head off and stuffed, Graham cookies.
Well, think about this, okay? People are buying Scott Sigler's GFL series, right? And that's YA. And then they see Paul E. Cooley on the writer as well. That's YA. That's the only YA book I've ever had my mitts in. Everything else that I write is definitely not YA.
Has somebody ever sent you a note saying, "You monster"?
No. I've had some people go. I just had an email recently from somebody who listened to the writer and was like, "Man, I was really impressed with this story," and then went and checked out The Black. That's a completely different book. Well, duh. And they were like, This is good. I really, really enjoy this, but this is nothing like the writer. Yeah. That's yeah.
I figure, it's probably only going to be another couple of years before he contacts you to get the sequel written.
Oh God. I still haven't read it. I don't know how it ends.
He was so tired of the damn thing by the end, he just killed everyone off, and that's the end of it.
Anything's possible. I have no idea. Like I said, I haven't read it, so
hell, we ought to sign the writer for one of our books so we can all find out how it ends.
And then we'll bring on Scott Sigler. Why did you do this, that, and the other?
The fuck is this?
You even took out the sentence that started the book. It was a dark and stormy night. How did you take that out? You know what? I should really put that in one of my manuscripts
to test who notices.
The tested editor, to see if they just strike that immediately. It was a dark and stormy night. I would love to see how many editors would go, "Oh, just basically immediately they read that one sentence and they send me an email back going, 'No, you're fired.'" I can't. You're too stupid to have as a client.
Your only problem is that the moment you do that, you're going to go to the Balticon, and Sue is going to murder you.
She won't be the only one. So backtracking, think what we said. If you're gonna make it, if you're writing adult genre stuff, and then you want to write a kid's book, it might be a case where a pseudonym it makes sense. And by the same token, if you're writing erotica and then you're running write some mainstream stuff or whatever, I shouldn't even call it mainstream, other genre stuff, erotica just gets put in a different bag. It just does. Some people will get completely turned off by it. They won't quite understand what you're going for. Pseudonym might make sense there. But if you're writing horror, science fiction, mystery, suspense, detective, whatever, in the mainstream genres, so to speak, I don't think there's any reason for a pseudonym.
Yeah, erotica and children's books might be the only reason to have a separate name, because even then with children's books, like I was saying, a number of other types of things you could write might not be appropriate for that audience. Yeah. And it's always the appropriateness of the audience you need to bear in mind for there.
Yeah, in that particular case, yes. So you don't want them to jump from, 2 dicks for Sophie to 2 dogs for Sophie.
Hell of a typo right there in that search engine. See the kid in the window.
Mom, what is this word? Oh, let me see.
Pretty soon, you're going to get these nasty letters, my child, blah, 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 Paulie Cooley, blah, blah, blah.
My only response will be, thank you for your patronage. It's like when I get an email accusing me of all sorts of things, I just write back, thank you for your patronage.
How many of these emails do you get that accuse you of all these things?
I don't really get many. I've gotten some comments. I've gotten some Facebook deals. This one woman was very upset with me about the derelict thing. She's like, how dare you not actually finish the story for publishing it and this, that, and the other. And it's just a scam. It's like, well, thank you for your patronage.
My personal favorite for getting a note like that is when someone sent me a letter just lambasting me, saying they could not read any of my books or recommend them to any of my friends because of the rampant and complete out of control cursing.
They've obviously never read Jake Bible. That's what
considering it was a review for a comment about a specific book in the Empire of Bones saga, I said, are you sure that this is the book you read? Because I don't remember any of this.
I think you were reading Jake Bible and got confused.
and the response I got back was, never mind.
I love it. I love it. That's awesome. That shit just happens.
I wish I still had that letter. I could go ahead and use it as a pull quote.
Oh God, yet another scene. One of my favorite scenes from Family Guy is Brian is the dog is driving and he runs over somebody and he gets out and he looks at this guy and he's like, are you Stephen King? The guy goes like, no, I'm Dean Koontz. He gets back in the car, runs him over again. Sorry, yeah. Random.
Anyway, we were talking about branding, which brings up something else that I wanted to touch base with you. Are you sure that Flames is the right name for it? Because imagine how many searches that sucker is going to pop up on. And it's not exactly a descriptive / thrilling title. It's just a word. And for branding purposes, even though this is just as generic as Flames, if you had something like City in Flames or World on Fire or anything like that, that's still, a step up in the title category. But
so it's you can
do better. It's not much of a step up. It's not much of a step up.
It's a step up to start stealing titles for really bad 80s soft rock songs. Is that what you're telling me?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm telling you.
What you just said sounds like some shit I would hear from Styx and Foreigner or Journey.
I'm not saying what the title should be. I'm just saying that you should maybe consider the title before you go live with it, because I think you could do better. I don't know what that is right now, but I think you could do better.
This is actually one of those strange things or problems I sort of have with titles with the Fiends universe, but I mean, you can see it even with the Black and Derelict. I like one-word titles. I don't know why. I just do. I always have. And I'll have to think about that. The problem is that if I give it a more descriptive title, it'll kind of give away the punchline.
I'm not saying you necessarily have to. I just wanted to raise the point that from a branding perspective that you should consider other options as well.
And what do I do? Call it Pyro?
Why not? Pyro actually might be a better title. It's certainly a more active title.
But then it's got a whole another set of baggage associated with it.
Any title you want to pick is going to have baggage of some type associated with it, because nothing is truly original. It's just the way it is. Are you
kidding? All my books are original.
Only because Garaga sounds like garbage compactor.
Garage door, fucker.
Oh, my bad. Is there a demon in my garage?
When I go look, if you type in Garaga into your search engine, it will immediately try and correct it to Garaga, the garage company.
Is there really a Garaga garage company?
There is, but it doesn't have a double A. Yeah. Shit, I didn't
That's
know.
awesome.
Yeah, I was less than pleased when I discovered that shit. Anyway, it's kind of like the title thing is really tough because the reason why I like Flames is because it is non-descriptive. And it has a feeling, but it does have baggage with it because it just brings these things in. And part of the reason for the title was the fact that when I was at that house fire, that image is just burned into my skull of the actual fire itself.
I understand. You could even go with something like Up in Flames, even though that's, again, another, it's a very common phrase, so it's going to pop up everywhere with all kinds of.
Yeah, I'll call it Up in Smoke, and I'll be buried under 42,000 references to Cheech and Chong before they get to me.
Here's your new title: Cheech Had It Coming.
Oh, I'm not even going to comment on that. Anyway, that is an interesting
Dave's
point.
Not here, man.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I hadn't really thought about that at all. But I do know it's an issue. Like, okay, for instance, track 9. Track 9.
I assume that's an 8-track sort of thing where you've got an extra track tagged on the end, and if you're not 50 years old, you will have no idea what it means.
Sort of, but not. Actually, a lot not. It's track 9 of a recording, as in the 9th song on the recording. But track 9 could also be for a train.
Okay.
So track 9 is kind of confusing. You'd have to look at the cover to put it in context.
And if it was a porn novel, you could make it Up the Caboose.
Really? Really? You had to go there, really?
I did have to go there.
Yep, this is the shit I got to put up with every week here at DRS. So, was there any other thing you were talking about with branding?
No, because I was just, the only thing I know about the branding you got, I don't have any idea what your cover is. It's just the title. And I was just going to point out that, think about that title before you use it, because you may have other options that make the story stand out more when people are scrolling down the screen.
Titles suck.
Titles do suck.
Titles suck. They really do suck, because you can come up with a title, and usually I don't know how this works, but maybe that's why I get so attached to things. I get attached to the title that springs into my mind. It's usually the work in progress, and I have the title from day one, and it doesn't ever change. Tattoo could have been called a whole load of different things, but it was Tattoo. I mean, that was the whole story, was about a tattoo to an extent. And that was really the whole focus. I could have called it anything else. I could have called it Tattoo of the Phoenix. I could have called it the Phoenix Tattoo. I could have called it, I don't know what else I could have called it, but I could have called it a dozen other things. But Tattoo just rolled off the way I wanted it to, especially in the podcast promos, especially in the audio promos. It just rolled off that way. Flames is the same thing. If somebody hears Flames on the podcast and on a promo, they're going to remember Flames. They're not going to remember a 5-word title. They're going to remember Flames because it's short, it's snappy, it's there. And they're probably also going to remember something about what the jargon was that I used in the audio promo. Obviously, my brain is still thinking podcast. My brain is still thinking audio for a lot of this stuff. And so you and I come at these things from a little bit of a different vantage point. But I guess that's why I get stuck on those things. But it is interesting that you bring that up, because all the Fiend's Tales were like that too. They're 1-word titles. Everything's 1-word titles. I don't know why I do that, but I do. I don't know. It's just the thing, man. But I will definitely keep that in mind. And that also brings up, the kinds of problems we can have with the cover. It's like, what do you do? Do you just have just a picture of Flames on it? And, do you have other stuff on there? What do you do exactly?
Yeah,
Maybe you
it's going to
have,
be a challenge for you.
maybe you have a hand, a gnarled hand that's on fire. I mean, something along those lines. I don't know. We haven't really discussed it yet. My creative team is supposedly, Scott Pond is apparently turning it over in his mind, and we'll see what he comes up with. Because all my ideas are shit. I shouldn't say all my ideas. Most of my ideas are shit. That's why I'm the word guy. That's my job. These other people are better at their jobs than I am. So at their jobs. So I know that at least. I'm a jack of all trades, master of nothing. And when I need a master, I go pay one.
Not a bad idea.
Yeah, it's pretty much a good business model, I think. You don't want your CEO coding. That's usually a bad idea.
I can see two programmers now looking on. What's he doing?
I don't know, but it looks like basic.
Is that Visual Basic? God. Oh man, it's Commodore's.
Oh no! Stop that! What is that horrible thing he's using? That's Edlin. Wow!
Did you see the latest memo from the CEO? He's busy, flaming somebody because they're using Vim. He says it's Emacs all the way, baby.
Oh, don't even get started in that religious war. Just don't even start that. I love actually having that religious war, but always tongue in cheek. But we're not going to do that.
Are you an Emacs man?
Do what now?
You an Emacs or VI man?
Yes.
I love VI.
I prefer Emacs.
I knew it. You're Satan. I actually have VI installed on my Windows machine.
Wow, I actually have Vi and Emacs and R and all sorts of other things installed by default on my Mac system.
Yes, but you have a Mac system.
Yes, I have a Unix system.
So it's pluses and minuses.
Yes, all the pluses are here. All the minuses are on your operating system, but that's an entirely different religious war.
Except for the fact that you just can't find any software that works on it that's worth a damn.
You're right. Windows doesn't have any software that works on it that's worth a damn.
That's totally true. I can't argue with that.
Yeah, when's Vellum for Windows coming out? Yeah, don't make me stick that knife in, Terry, because I'll do it.
Who knows? Maybe after I buy a Mac and install Vellum on it, I'll go, yeah, I was wrong the entire time. What? Oh, I don't know about that. I'm not sure. We'll see.
Well, that's interesting, though, to bring up the branding part, because we do see those things in the Facebook group from time to time. How do you create your brand? How do you, how do you get some identification out there for yourself? And that's a conversation and go on for like 3 freaking hours with slides and shit.
Christine Catherine Rush is on her blog going through.
You were going to throw out one of those names. I knew it was going to be Dean Wesley Smith or Catherine Rush.
She is in the process of going through. It's been about 7 or 8 blog posts over the last couple of months talking about branding and about marketing. It's actually marketing is what she's talking about, but the last 3 weeks have been talking about branding. And these are huge essays on various segments of it. And she's just barely scratching the surface. Branding is a huge thing, and it's a complex thing, and it's not easy.
I have a brand because, again, it started with the podcast. And for better or worse, it's gonna follow me around for probably the rest of my career.
Here's the thing about branding. There are different kinds of branding. You as an author, you just talked about the branding that you as an author have.
Right, yes.
There's also the branding of how you style your covers.
Correct.
There's other brandings beyond that. I don't want to dig into the meat of those posts because we could talk about those for a couple of weeks, a couple of episodes, talk about different kinds of branding and not scratch the surface of it. But this is something that you have to take a bite at a time and work your way into. because brand is always evolving.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's the other thing that goes on with it. You may have companies rebrand themselves every once in a while. Authors rebrand themselves every once in a while. They'll change. Publishing companies even occasionally will change their insignia, their sigil, depending on, what's going on. Shadow Publications has changed at least twice. And part of that's because I had no idea what I was doing when I first did it. But the original Shadow Publications logo is still around. It's still on the page. It's still everywhere. And there's still people who don't even recognize the new logo. All they think is the old logo, because that's what that's how they first found me. That's how they first, encountered it. So it can get a little bit difficult to change things around. But the brand for you as an author, that's consistency in author photos. That's, in my mind, it's consistency in some of the cover design, like you're talking about. And this is if we're going indie here. If you have total control over all of that, then we can get into the conversation of basically you have a brand for sci-fi, a brand for fantasy, a brand for this, that, and the other, because you can break it down, or you can try and have the same cover feel for all of your books.
Unfortunately, if you're talking about somebody in traditional publishing, especially someone that's been around for a while and written for any number of houses, then each one will have tried to brand that author in a different way, and they're going to have this horrible mismatch of brand.
So when you go and look at when you buy all their books and put them on the bookshelf, the titles give OCD people seizures.
And especially, you were talking about pen names earlier. That comes back into this as well.
Yes.
Somebody like Christine Catherine Rush has been around long enough to where she's written under any number of pseudonyms. And some of them are still active, even though she's writing novels as an indie now. She's got most of her own works back, but she's already established as Christine Grayson, writing light paranormal romance type stuffy. And she's got other types of books that are different than that, and she writes them under the names that they are established under. It's too late for her to bring those underneath one umbrella because she would lose the audience that she's already built there. It can get really messy.
It can, which is why my first inclination is no, stay away from it. But yeah, and we said this before, if you go with the big five, you have absolutely no control. Until you become a big beefy bastard like a Stephen King or somebody like that, you probably can't exert any control over that.
Hi, I'm James Patterson, and I have this minion writing the book for me.
Yeah, that dig bag. Or you could be a James Patterson and still not have control. But chances are, if you get up to that level, you will have some say in what goes on. But trust me, if you're in the hell list, I mean mid list, especially if you're a brand new writer, most publishing companies aren't going to give a shit what you think. If there are any writers out there who disagree with this and can talk about their specific experiences, I'd love to hear it. I'd love to hear it. But I don't think that I'm going to be hearing from any. Partly because none of them listen to the show, and the other part, well, I don't think it happens. I could be wrong. I could be. It's possible. When you're indie, you have this kind of control. When you're with small presses, you get a little bit more control. But when you go to the big five, there ain't much control to be had unless you're very, very lucky or with a very adventurous imprint, which they do have. Hard to believe, but they do have them. So, yeah, we'll see how the branding disaster works out when I finally get around to publishing this monster sometime in October, I think.
I think you should consult with Jake Bible on your branding.
I don't want anything to do with Jake Bible. Every time I talk to him, I'm afraid I'm going to catch his cooties or something. I just, the guy's virulent. It's just horrible. When are we having him on the show again?
I was waiting until things settled down. I still haven't contacted him to let him know.
Yeah. Well, never know. He might listen to the show occasionally. I have no idea. I have no idea.
If you're listening, Jake, we're planning on inviting you on, and we're going to let you dictate the subject matter.
Hey, Jake, if you're out there, yeah, you're coming on the show.
Surprise!
We'll send you the date. Remember those pictures I have? Well, it's time for you to pay for them.
Those negatives, those things will never go away.
They sure as shit weren't positives. Anyway,
You've totally confused people that only have digital cameras. They don't know what this negative thing is.
Yeah, I don't know what a negative is. They're like, are you talking about that filter in Photoshop? Yes, that.
And here's another thing for you that's totally useless to everybody nowadays. Shaking a Polaroid does not make it develop faster.
No. And yet everybody in the 70s did that.
It's so totally true.
You'd always take it out and you'd shake it.
You would, and it does not actually help it develop faster.
I wonder how that got started.
No
Okay,
idea.
Your homework assignment for the week, listeners, go find out how that thing started, how that myth started. And if there's any truth in it at all. Terry claims there isn't.
I just saw it on a documentary just the other day.
No shit.
Where they were talking about that.
Fake news.
Probably.
All right.
It was Adam ruins everything, so it's probably fake.
Yeah, right. So we beaten these various topics of craziness into submission.
Shit, we barely scratched this particular subject, but I think that we've done what we can.
Yeah, in the time period allotted, especially since it's 7 o'clock now.
Hey, what time did we start?
5.
There you go. It's not like we started at 2.
No, thankfully. Well, if you have comments, questions, complaints about the content of this show and the things that Terry and I don't know about anything.
And what Paul's wearing.
Oh, I'm dead sexy today. You can send us an email at show@deadrobotsociety.com. You can tweet me at Paul_E_Cooley, or you can join the listeners of the Dead Robot Society Facebook group. I got it right. Where you can join in all the crazy and post questions like the ones we tried to answer today, and also join in the conversations and become a beta reader for some folks, find some beta readers, blah, 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 you name it, it's out there. And we would be remiss if we didn't thank our wonderful host, Pod Hoster, for hosting all 14 bazillion episodes of the Dead Robot Society for your ears. You can find us our YouTube channel at youtube.com/DRS podcast. And if you would like, you could join our Patreon at patreon.com/DRS podcast, where for as little as $1 a month, you can get access to exclusive content, live shows, the unexpurgated, uncensored versions of the show, like the ones we just recorded.
We need to do a live show.
And the live, and we need to schedule one. We need to schedule one for this month, as well as live shows where you can come on and ask questions. So check that out. And speaking of Patreon, we have to give a shout out to our $10 a month patrons, who are Drew, Red Shirt Killer Bernardi, Robert Slade, John Kilgallen, Chris Winder, Isabel Cushy, Andre Conde Moraes, DJ Chamberlain, Jonathan Zarusin, J.R. Hanley, excuse me, and Caleb Door-to-Door Crack Whore James, and of course Sue Bayman. Caleb, really? What's next? What's next? Where can you go from here?
I think you'll find out next week.
Oh God, don't. I should have said nothing. I should have said nothing. Caleb Door-to-Door Crack Whore James. On that note, Terry, it was fun talking with you again, and I guess we'll do it again next week.
We will.
And hopefully you'll be with us. Until then, have a good one, and we'll talk to you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.